Good afternoon, Canucks fans. Welcome back to another episode of Canucks Conversation, brought to you by Bet365. My name is Dave Quadrelli. I'm joined by Harman Dial. Harman, what are we going to talk about today? We were having this discussion of, okay, we're in the offseason. Obviously, we're going to talk about the playoffs. That's a given. Every show that we're doing for the next few weeks, we're going to talk about the playoffs. But let's dive into a Canucks topic. I cooked up this little beauty. What would Elias Pettersson get if he were an unrestricted free agent right now? Now, that's a big what if and a big hypothetical. So we're going to get to it later in the show. But we did throw out the question. The reason I bring it up at the top is for people that are watching the live show. Get your responses in. Let us know. Answer the question. I'd love to see what people cook up. Speaking of the chat, I want to tell everybody about our Super Chat charity partner this season, the BC Mental Health Foundation. You want to make sure your question or comment gets on the show, hit us with a Super Chat. Proceeds from our Super Chat will go to the BC Mental Health Foundation, changing the face of mental health and addiction by supporting breakthroughs in care, public understanding, research, and knowledge exchange. All right. We're going to be joined by Jeff Paterson in a matter of moments. Before that, though, I wanted to ask you, what did you think of the game last night?
It's interesting because when the Oilers went down 2-0 early, I'm at the point now with Edmonton, especially after watching that LA series and even how many times they've done it to the Canucks in the regular season, where I didn't even think anything of it. I was like, oh, they're down 2-0. I'm sure they'll be back. Like, that's the level the Oilers are at right now, where they dig themselves a hole that for basically every other team in the NHL, I'd look at and go, against the Vegas Golden Knights, one of the best defensive teams in the NHL, that's going to be an uphill battle. Not that it's impossible, but you've really dug yourself a hole here. Whereas as soon as it happened for the Oilers, I'm like, I've seen their fastball in the LA series. They're going to be back. And as soon as they scored the first one, even though Aiden Hill played well and Vegas had the 2-1 lead heading into the third period, you just knew that it was inevitable Edmonton was going to break through. I mean, it was pure annihilation in terms of the flow of play, how many offensive chances they created, and that team is just terrifying to watch right now.
So when that happens, the question we always ask is like, okay, how much of that was Vegas not having the composure and how much it was Edmonton? I lean more on that's just Edmonton. Like that's just what they do, because again, we saw them do it to LA, one of the better teams at closing out leads in the regular season. Vegas, you can put them in that conversation as well. I don't think that says a ton about Vegas as much as it does just like that's what the Oilers are going to do.
100%. And honestly, like, I'm learning through watching the Oilers because this is a really interesting sort of template in terms of a team. Obviously, other teams can't copy having McDavid and Draisaitl and having that elite offensive gear. But a lot of us, myself included, I'll raise my hand up, looked at the Oilers this year and went, no Matthias Ekholm, who's their best all-around defenseman, Pickard and Skinner and net. I don't love that. And even on paper, their depth at the forward position didn't look very strong. And so in my mind, this was a weaker Edmonton team than the one that made it to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final last year. They could also be spotty at times defensively. And so I looked at Edmonton as a vulnerable team this year. But what I'm learning is when you have that elite offensive gear that you can tap into, that as soon as your guys hop over the boards, it feels like they're attacking downhill, that you can control 15 to 20 minute stretches of the game. Heck, 40-minute stretches of the games, multiple periods, like it's a power play the entire time. I mean, that's just something that overpowers even the best defensive teams. And so we obviously glorify sort of defensive hockey in the playoffs and the importance of structure, and all those things are important, right? The teams that typically win Stanley Cups do defend well, but we're learning also that sometimes if you have that unstoppable level offensively, you can break through even though you may have flaws.
RE45 in the chat said, gotta get Pickard his cup this year. Is a team with Calvin Pickard as their netminder going to win the Stanley Cup? Is that really going to happen? Yeah, it might. And we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. The other game, I didn't even see it. I didn't watch that game, Carolina, Washington. It went to overtime and it ended in a Hurricanes win. I picked Capitals to win that series. I'm sticking with that. Good for Jacob Slavin. I like Jacob
feel
Slavin.
That great. I wouldn't feel that great about that pick if I were you. I know the Caps had the lead early, but the Canes hit multiple posts. They dominated the possession and shots, which they normally do. But even just watching the Capitals play,
I didn't watch. Were they outmatched? Were they really outmatched?
They were really outmatched.
Caps Canes was a snooze fest, says Calcios Rico in the chat. We'll talk more playoffs after, I'm sure. But let's bring in Jeff Patterson, who's brought to you by Pacific Toyota Dealers, who want to tell you about the 100% electric Toyota BZ4X, an SUV packed with plenty of space. The BZ4X can handle any terrain and can take you from the city to the slopes. It's backed by the peace of mind that comes with knowing you're driving a Toyota, and if you're driving a BZ4X, you get access to HOV lanes even if you're driving alone. When you choose the BZ4X, you can get up to $6,500 in rebates and incentives, and now you can finance the 2025 BZ4X from 0.99% APR for 36 months. Visit shoptoyota.ca or your local Pacific Toyota dealer today. All right, let's bring him in. Jeff Patterson. Jeff, did you catch any playoff hockey last night?
I did. Actually, I watched a fair bit of both games. Certainly was locked in on the Oilers and the Golden Knights, but watched the overtime. It didn't last long before Carolina won. And as Harm said, I mean, I can't remember what the final numbers were, but the shot attempts were like 105 to 30 or something for the Carolina. Like the discrepancy was insane. And I mean, Washington finished with 14 shots on goal. And for the longest time, it looked like Vegas might not eclipse 14 shots on goal. So the home teams, teams that had higher expectations, not exactly charging out of the gate in round two. And I think for me, the scary part with the Oilers here, guys, is like Corey Perry is not just window dressing on that top line, but this guy has found his finishing again at the playoff level. He's played 222 career Stanley Cup playoff games. And so if you got Corey Perry on your top line, obviously he's going to benefit from playing with McDavid and Draisaitl at times, but it allows them then to move Zach Hyman around. And I think you saw last night that the depth of the Edmonton Oilers, I think at times we've all wondered, like, is it just a two-man team? They're doing this without Matthias Ekholm. They're doing it with Calvin Pickard in goal. But, Connor Brown scores the goal to seal the deal there last night. And yes, Vegas was without Pietrangelo and without Dorofeyev. They need those guys back because I kind of thought Vegas looked a little slow last night. Tanner Pearson was playing on their top line at times, which is great for Tanner Pearson. But, I don't know if Tanner Pearson on the top line at this stage of his career is the blueprint for a team that has designs on going really deep in the playoffs. So it's one game. That's all it is. But good on the Oilers, good on the Carolina Hurricanes. They get the jump. They had to win one in the visiting rink because the lower seed. And so they've accomplished that. And let's see where things go from here.
J-Pat, just watching the playoffs to this point, are there any lessons or takeaways that have stood out to you from the Canucks perspective or just overall team building philosophy?
Yeah, I think we do this every year where we try to take some lessons of the teams that are still playing and apply them to the teams that aren't. And for the Vancouver Canucks, they just need a whole lot more. We know that, right? Offensively, they need a whole lot more. And the physicality of that first round, I kind of would try to, in my mind, insert the Canucks into some of those series and basically ask myself, like, would they survive? Like, physically, would they survive? And there were a couple of series there where I'm not so sure. This is not a big team up front. Most of their size is on the back end, the way that Rick Tocchet had wanted his defense core built. But up front, they're not an abrasive group. They're not a group that is terribly proactive as opposed to being one that has to react. And then in saying that, I mean, some of the component parts got to round two, game 7 last year against Edmonton. So, they had a little bit of success, a taste of it at the very least. But no, I mean, the more that I look is just, who's going to initiate outside of Kiefer Sherwood? Like, who are the wrecking balls? Because we see that guys that are skill players, finesse players in the regular season, but they sort of change their stripes come playoff time. I'm not sure that the Canucks have a lot of those guys, and I don't know if you saw it yesterday, but I tweeted out 4 forward lines based on players that are under contract for the Vancouver Canucks, and it's going to change. Like, there are guys that are their own RFAs. There are guys that are pending UFAs that could be back. There's trades, obviously, that's coming. But of the 12 forwards that I put line combinations together for that are under contract for next year, like, it is so thin in such a hurry. And it just underscores how much work there is left to be done for this team, not just to make the playoffs, but ultimately to be a team that then can win a couple of rounds, consider itself a contender. And so that's the challenge. We know Jim Rutherford has vocalized it. He realizes that it's quite a challenge as well. But in terms of lessons, to me, it's just the forward group and how far away the Vancouver Canucks are right now.
Jeff, something else you tweeted out today that I found really interesting was when it comes to the Canucks coaching search, talking about can they find a coach that isn't going to ride Demko into the ground. Obviously, you pointed out Bruce Boudreau in the tweet. You also obviously mentioned Tocchet as well. That's a really interesting thing to kind of ponder here because, I mean, if I was the coach and I was coming into my first year, I'd probably do the same.
Exactly. And I assume that in today's coaching search that these candidates do their homework, they go over the roster, they recognize, but if you're getting this Canucks job, like, what is your path to immediate success? It's Elias Pettersson having a bounce back. It's Quinn Hughes somehow leveling up yet again, and yet I think we all think that he probably will do that. But the next one on that chart would be Thatcher Demko playing like Thatcher Demko, being the elite goaltender, the Vezina finalist, and a new coach comes in, he wants wins right out of the gate. It wouldn't shock me at all if he turned to Thatcher Demko, who gets this whole offseason to rest up, to recover, to train, to be ready to go. And the hope obviously is that he's completely healthy when the season rolls around. And so, the last two guys have driven Demko into the ground essentially. So what have we learned here? And is there an organizational edict that says to whoever is given the keys to this job that, look, you can't. You've got Lankin in here now. You've got two guys that you have to believe in. And it's not about having this success right out of the gate in October. It's about having a guy that can be there for you when the chips are down the stretch, and ultimately into the playoffs if the team makes it. But no, I think I can see that scenario playing out, but I do hope that sort of, not that you're going to get it in writing from the new coach, but that there is just this understanding that Thatcher Demko at this stage of his career and with the injuries that he's dealt with, less is probably more in the big picture here. But I won't be shocked if Thatcher Demko is the starting goaltender on opening night, and if all of a sudden they fall into this pattern of trying to get on a run on the back of their guy.
Since Rick Tocchet left, it really feels like, to me anyway, that there's been a lot of heat from the fan base directed at the organization, at management, and at ownership. And I don't think it's so much about Rick Tocchet specifically as much as it is the organization just continues to rack up a lot of L's, quite frankly, over the last few months. And it just sort of feels like that was maybe the straw that broke the camel's back in a sense. First of all, have you sensed that just large shift over the last few weeks where it really feels like there's a lot of pessimism among the fan base? And secondly, when it does come to that conversation of how dysfunctional this franchise has been lately, how much of that responsibility do you think management bears, and how much of it do you think ownership bears?
Without a doubt, I sense it the same way that you do. And I think Rick Tocchet stepping away when the reported offer of 5x5 was on the table and that wasn't enough, I think people recognize then, man, there are some really deep-seated issues here that a guy would turn his back on the chance to continue coaching Quinn Hughes and other component parts and live in a great city. But, money doesn't solve everything, and money can't ultimately get guys to stay. And so, I think that was just sort of the topper that even the coach wants out here what is going on. So who bears responsibility? It's funny because I've had this conversation with people in the organization, and I want to make it abundantly clear. What happened before Jim Rutherford and Patrick Elvine and ultimately Rick Tocchet arrived here, they're not responsible for. But I don't know that they fully grasp that they've inherited a fan base that has dealt with 55 years of losing. I think in their mind, Canuck history starts when they took over the job, but that's just not the way it works. And so every year that goes by, the Canucks flame out and don't make the playoffs and ultimately don't win the Stanley Cup, the angst in this market grows. And I think they have to be willing to accept that at the very least. Like when Jim Rutherford said, yeah, it's not great, fourth coach in 4 years, but I want to make it clear I've only hired one. Well, he's going to hire the second one here. It felt like he was trying to dodge a little bit of Canuck history in saying that. And your constituents, the people that buck up repeatedly and the ones that the renewal rate's at 90+%, these people have dealt with a lot of crap over a lot of years, and they want to win and they want to be entertained and they want to feel like they're getting value for their money. So I think it's important that management recognizes that. Ownership would have a better feel for that. I think ownership also senses the fair bit of heat directed at it. And look, there have been a lot of missteps from the ownership side of things. Obviously, more family drama here in the last week or so. But I do think that this ownership group has written the checks to allow management to spend to the cap, and it sounds like they're going to continue to do that. And just from a working framework, then, I put it more at the feet of management, quite frankly. I get the people that have it out for ownership, but you don't get a say in this. Like, as much as you want to scream on social media, you can't tell the Aquilinis to sell the team. Like, it just doesn't work that way. It's not a democracy. It's a business. And if they choose to sell, that's going to be their decision ultimately. And that's not to say that people can't put heat on ownership, but you can't force them to sell. That's sort of the point that I'm making here. So it comes back to who's running this thing. And it sounds like management has been given the resources to get the job done. And unfortunately, it looked like they were trending in the right direction a year ago. And 12 months later, here we sit as they sort of are spinning their wheels and have a massive summer out in front of them.
Jeff, Canucks have the 15th overall pick. Feels like a foregone conclusion that they're going to flip that pick for a center. But quickly, I'll ask you, are you team trade the pick? Are you team draft a player with it? Where are you there?
Well, I laughed, and this doesn't apply to CanucksArmy because we always get it right with the headlines there. But I saw a lot of headlines yesterday, like Canucks will pick 15th. And I was like, no, they hold the 15th selection in the draft. But let's not for a second think that you can say on the record that the Canucks are going to pick 15th. I anticipate that it's very much in play. The question is, what is its value in a draft that sounds like it gets pretty thin after about 5 or 6 picks? And so the 15th overall pick, I mean, at least now it's a fixed asset, right? Like, they know what they're working with, but it's probably going to take 15 plus. And so what is the plus, and how deep do you go there? And a lot of people are sensing that, hey, if there's truly sticking points with Willander, is that 15 and Willander? I just fear, I guess I fear, and maybe this is the pessimist in me speaking here, that if Quinn elects to walk in a couple of years, or they get to the point that they have to trade Quinn, there really isn't much in the system, guys. I'm watching Abbotsford closely these days. We're doing a rink-wide after each and every one. We'll be at it again tonight. And, Jonathan Lecker-Mackey is supposed to get back in the lineup tonight, but he's been out for a while, but hasn't played particularly well and hasn't produced down there. There's still questions about what is he, how quickly is he going to arrive at the National Hockey League level? And he is their prize prospect. Willander's not even in the fold. And yeah, DPD has come a long way. It would be so much better if this Abbotsford playoff run right now was on the backs of those young guys and, they were doing it every night, but it's not. It's on a bunch of AHL veterans like Sammy Blais and Phil DiGiuseppe and Jujhar Khaira the other night. And that's great for Abbotsford. You need those kinds of guys. But in terms of so if getting back to your question about trading the first rounder, I mean, we've seen them do that so often here of late. This isn't a team that has a stockpile of prospects just waiting. They've got guys. We saw them roll 16 different players through Vancouver that played in Abbotsford this year, but they're not all going to be full-time NHLers. They're all certainly not going to be difference makers at the NHL level. And then it puts so much pressure to develop the next DPD from a 3rd round pick, or Kirill Kudratsev from the 7th round. That doesn't happen very often in the National Hockey League. Sure, some of those guys make it, but if you're trading away your 1st and 2nd round picks, it's going to catch up to you at some point. And the question is, when does that bill come due? And so, as much as I don't like the idea of trading the 1st round pick again, I also understand that you got to give to get. And I do expect that 15th will be in the hands of somebody else come draft day. And then I guess it's just a question of, ultimately what can they get in return to try to build up that forward group.
Speaking of Abbotsford, tied in the series right now in round 2 against Coachella Valley. What have you seen from Abbotsford so far, and how do you like their chances of potentially moving on?
Well, I like their chances. They've boiled this thing down to a best of 3 now with all the games in Abbotsford. So they did what they had to do to get the split down in Palm Springs. So now it's almost like the first round against Tucson, where all the games were played out in the Fraser Valley. Their performance has been spotty through the first 5 games. Sammy Blais has been good and productive, leads the Canucks with 6 points. But all of his goals have come on the power play. There have been some others. We talked about, Jujhar Khaira had a big night the other night. That's great for him. But a player like Archdeep Baines, who led Abbotsford in regular season scoring and did it while spending chunks of time in the National Hockey League as well, he's been remarkably quiet so far. And I have to think the longer they play here in the playoffs, the better the chance that he'll have a night where you think, all right, like that's the guy that they need more often. But he's got 4 points in 5 games, but 2 of them are primary assists and 2 are secondary assists, and really hasn't been a dominant force. Max Sasson has had some moments, but 3 points in 5 games. You'd like to see more there. And now I'm a little worried about some injuries. Jet Wu got knocked out of the game 3 minutes in the other night. They were down to 5 defensemen. I know he was skating yesterday, but I don't expect that he's going to play. And Ratu left the game the other night after 2 periods. And it's tough to get injury updates at playoff time in any level, but particularly out of the American Hockey League. I don't expect that Ratu's going to play tonight. And Army, he's been really quiet for a guy that finished the season so strong in the National Hockey League. And if he's not producing, then you got to do other things, win faceoffs and kill penalties. He got beaten cleanly. Like had his clock cleaned on a faceoff that led to the opening goal in Palm Springs the other night. And so just expecting more based on his resume and his experience in the pro game. I'm expecting more there. So curious to see. I'm curious to see what Matty Malholtzer does in goal tonight, because Artur Silovs got the hook the other night. Tolopilo came in, played well, and then got caught out of the net, turned the puck over on the winner. And so my hunch is that Tolopilo will get the net tonight. Hasn't played a home game yet in these playoffs. And Artur Silovs has had his moments, but he gave up 3 on 8 shots, and they were behind the 8-ball 3-0 before mounting a stirring comeback the other night. So I guess the best way to put it is it's been spotty in terms of individual efforts. They've given up an early goal in each of the first 2 games against Coachella Valley. That's a difficult way to play and have success, unless you're the Edmonton Oilers, apparently. But again, they're in good shape in a 1-1 tie with these 3 games, if necessary, here at home. And I just hope that they're healthy enough and don't sustain any more injuries, because attrition obviously can play a factor in any sort of plans on a long playoff run. So big one tonight. If they can get the win tonight, then they get 2 cracks at eliminating Coachella Valley. But the flip side there is if they fall, then it's back-to-back losses, and now their backs are against the wall. So let's see what happens. I still like their chances to prevail in this series.
All right. Well, you'll get to see how it goes tonight, and you'll be covering it on Rink-Wide. Are we calling it Rink-Wide Abbotsford? What's the policy here, Jeff? What are you saying?
Yeah, we're calling it Rink-Wide, and I fight to not call it Rink-Wide Vancouver, but old habits die hard. But sure, we can call it Rink-Wide Abbotsford Playoff Edition. Dave, we can call it whatever you'd like. As long as people are watching, the name doesn't really matter to me, but it does fall under the Rink-Wide banner, and we're hoping that we get a whole bunch more Abbey playoff games to work.
And there's going to be one tonight, and Jeff, you can watch Jeff on Rink-Wide. We'll call it Rink-Wide. We'll just call it Rink-Wide.
And Dave Hall,
who was with you
guys yesterday. Yes. So Dave's
exactly.
been doing a terrific job joining me, and he's going to be on with me again tonight. So I always look forward to his thoughts and takes and analysis after these Abbotsford playoff games.
Jeff, thanks for doing this. We'll see you later.
All right. Sounds good, guys. Thanks.
There he is, Jeff Paterson, the host of Rink-Wide Vancouver, Rink-Wide Abbotsford, Rink-Wide, host of Rink-Wide, Jeff Paterson. I found that really interesting about the coach, the tweet that I brought up from Jeff, the new coach having to resist the urge. That would be one of the questions I put in the interview, is like, so what do you think of our goaltending situation? I want to hear some good things about Kevin Lankinen from that guy coming in.
Yeah, I mean, if you're management, there needs to be some level of hey, this is the situation with Demko. We're going to have to cap his workload this year. We've got a reliable one being Lankinen, who's really sturdy for us this past season. That would, of course, be a conversation, not just in interviews, but whenever the head coach does get hired, come training camp, come the start of the season. And I think Demko himself realizes too, which is important, right? Starting goaltenders want to play as often as possible, typically. I don't think I've met a number 1 goalie who loves the idea of not playing as much as possible, but I think Demko realizes that some of these workload related issues have resulted in these injuries, and he's been through hell and back with these injuries. So that's a huge part too, is I feel like Demko is at the point now. We know that Jim Rutherford was speaking about how he's already altered his training style. The buy-in from the goaltender is massive, and sometimes even more important than what the coach is thinking. And so Now that Demko's on sort of the same page, management's on the same page, it's only natural that you'd expect whoever they hire as a head coach to follow suit.
All right, let's get to our question. Not poll question, it's just a question. And it's brought to you by our friends over at Greta Bar YVR. It's a great spot to catch all the playoff action right now. It's the home of our electric watch parties during the season as well. Make Greta your spot to hang out next time you're downtown. They've got the arcade games, they've got the bar, and the iconic street food menu. Make Greta your spot to chill. 50 West Cordova Street is the address. Let the games begin. All right, our question, we said it off the top. It is about Elias Pettersson. And the question is, if Elias Pettersson, the forward, were to become an unrestricted free agent on July 1st, what contract do you think he'd sign for? Now, I need people to really understand this exercise, Harm, because we've already had some people in the chat, and we appreciate everybody in the chat that's interacting with us. But I need people to understand the question isn't, if you put on a blindfold and only watched what Elias Pettersson did this past year, that was the only thing you'd seen, you took off the blindfold for just this year. Not the perfect metaphor, but you get where I'm going. I'm not asking what you would pay him if you've only watched this past season. I'm saying if Elias Pettersson, the 26-year-old, hit free agency, the 26-year-old, mind you, he has 3 30-goal seasons to his name, 100-plus point player. You know the resume by now, okay? If that guy, and including this past season, hit free agency on July 1st, what would he get on the open market? Yes, he's coming off a down year, but what would he get on the open market? Jacob, just cycle through some of these responses. Let's see what people said. ABC123 said 7 by 10 in a heartbeat. Colton Press said even more than what he's already signed for. Getting the UFA status always ups the amount teams will pay, and with a rising cap, it would just serve to increase it further. Sure, he had an off season, but 100-point players in their prime don't hit free agency that often. BK said 8 by 8. Tyler Lund said more than he's making right now, 100%. Young one C after a bad year, sure, who is also good defensively while giving up no assets other than cap space with a rising cap. 13 by 8 million easily. Obviously can't get 8 on the free agent market. It would be 13 by 7, but you get the point here. Aussie Goose said 9 million at the very most. What do you think?
Minimum $10 million player. Minimum. Like, absolute lowest point, 10 million, if not more. And the reason I say that is just look at the inflation around the league when it comes to contracts. Jacob Chychrun, as of next season, is going to be a $9 million defenseman. Jacob Chychrun is a number 2-3 defenseman. He's coming off of a very good season, but he's roughly comparable to Filip Hronek. Hronek was what, 7.25? You see the jump essentially in 1 year because of how much the cap is expected to rise, where Chychrun's all of a sudden a $9 million player. You look at Matt Coronado in Calgary. He's basically Calgary's Jonathan Lecker-Mackey, except he's 1 year older, where he was drafted in the middle of the first round. And he had sort of an up and down season where he produced a lot in the AHL, but didn't quite break out in the NHL. Then this past season, he broke out with 24 goals for the Flames. Young guy, he got $6.5 million on a long-term deal, and a lot of people, myself included, are looking at that as, oh, that's a pretty favorable contract because he's young, probably going to be a 30-goal scorer for a long time. But think about that: 24-goal season, and immediately he's a $6.5 million player as a winger, mind you. We're talking about Brock Besser potentially as an $8.5 million player. Even you look at centers with some outdated contracts. Pierre Dubois is an $8.5 million centerman. Bo Horvat is an $8.5 million centerman. So realistically, I would still expect Pettersson, if he hit the free agent market, to command $10.5, maybe $11 million on a max term 7-year deal.
We got a super chat here from Spatzilli. He said, slumping PD is essentially Mikael Granlund. Thank you for the super chat and the donation to the BC Mental Health Foundation. I agree with you, Harm. I agree with you. The chat is a lot more pessimistic than the Twitter folks were. But people, yeah, you have to understand that. And we don't even need to bring in the part of the exercise of where you look at the other centers available on the market. The answer is there ain't much. Who is it after Mitch Marner that's available? Like, where does it go from there? Ehlers, not really
Brock.
a center.
Sam Bennett.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Ehlers is a winger too. I thought you were just saying
Yeah.
UFA forwards in general.
Yeah, no, sorry, centers. UFA
Like,
centers.
it's just
Sam
Bennett.
Bennett. It's Sam Bennett. And that's basically
And
it.
then it's guys like Tavares and Duchesne who are probably going to stay because they like where they play.
Mhm.
Brock Nelson. It's a pretty thin crowd.
So if you bring that part of the conversation into it, that number goes up even further. And the reason I bring this up is all just to illustrate this idea that, Pettersson's a total sunk cost asset. It's like, if you let the rest of the league have their chance at signing him, it's not like people will be coming in and be like, oh, we need to see a 3-year prove-it deal at $6 million. Like, no, there would be suitors for Elias Pettersson. And it makes me think about this conversation about trading him, right? And if he'd have any value around the league. I think the problem for teams becomes that they have to give up assets to bring in what would likely be for at least half the league. It would be the biggest contract in their franchise's history. I think that's where the problem kind of arises, is that a team would have to really, really buck up in both assets and take on some serious risk.
It's also just so rare for a player with a 90 to 100 point potential sort of peak to ever become available. And teams are willing to roll the dice and take those risks. I mean, think about it this way. Dubois at the end of last season was coming off a brutal 40-point campaign with the LA Kings. $8.5 million times 7 years, was widely viewed as one of the worst contracts in the NHL. Plus, there were character concerns because of the unceremonious way that he exited Winnipeg and Columbus. There were questions about his work ethic, commitment level. He's a quitter, this and that. And the Capitals were still willing to roll the dice on him before his NMC kicked in, knowing that, oh crap, if this doesn't work out, he's got an NMC and we're going to be stuck with him. And it's not just, oh, he's not living up to this contract on the ice, but off the ice, again, there were question marks about his attitude and character and all that. And yet, because of how tough it is to find top six centers, there was still a taker. And this is the other thing in free agency is, if we're talking about $10 to $11 million cap hit, you don't need 6 teams to buck up and offer that. You only need one. All it takes is one team to value a player significantly higher than the rest of the market for the player to get that contract.
I wonder about the Buffalo Sabres as like a trade destination, right? They've been on the wrong end of these trades so many times where they're the team giving up the best player in the trade. Like, I wonder if the Buffalo Sabres, you got to try something if you're the Sabres, right?
Yeah, and are you talking about from an actual trade perspective this summer?
Totally realistic. Like, they've been interested in Pettersson before. We know that.
Yeah, I mean, of course they have to kick tires. They have to. They've got cap space. Every year they finish like top 5 in prospect rankings. They've collected an endless number of draft picks over the years. What they need is a win now help. They have a gap where they have sort of Tuck and Dahlin and Thompson as their sort of like proven core in their prime. And then they have this massive sort of gap before you get to guys that are young and haven't quite proven themselves yet, like the Owen Power sort of tier, Zach Benson, and some of their other prospects as well, Yuri Kulich, pardon me. What they need is more. What they need is more sort of players in that Thompson, Dahlin, Tuck tier that can help now. So yeah, 100%. If Pettersson is available, the Sabres should continue kicking tires. I just don't see a scenario where it would really make sense for the Canucks, to be honest with you.
And we've been on team. You got to keep them and hope for the best. We've been on that side for a while now, but I do wonder about the Sabres kicking tires. Okay, let's go. Let's go to anyone else, which is brought to you by our friends at the Vancouver Canadians, who are back on the road this week, but back at home at the Nat starting next Tuesday, May 13th, for a 6-game set with Everett, the Aqua Sox. Summer weather is nearly here. You can feel it. So it's a great time to get out to the Nat. They've got a nooner at the Nat on Friday the 16th. Get out of work early, grab some friends, and head on down to the ballpark. On Saturday the 17th, the Seas host Women in Sport Day with a special guest appearance by Hazel May. And check out the White Spot Family Fun Sunday on the 18th. Bring the kids. They get to run the bases post-game. It's always a fun day on a Sunday afternoon. For tickets, call 604-872-5232 or check out CanadiansBaseball.com. All right. Let's see what the chat says. Let's start with the seats at Rogers Arena. This photo courtesy of our pal at the Hockey News, Adam Kierszenblatt, who shared a photo that was sent to him by a friend of those maroon seats getting uprooted at Rogers Arena and these nice black seats going in. Beautiful black. Those leather? Have you seen the seats? We also have a close-up of the seats, Jacob. Let's look at the close-up of the seats as well. I don't know how I feel about the Canucks logo being on the seats, Harm.
Are they? I saw the photo, but I didn't inspect it too closely.
I need like 30 seconds to get a photo. But yes, on the side of the seats, they have the Canucks logo. So I'll find a photo of it.
Wasn't a fan. But I don't know.
Does it really matter?
No, I can't act like I care too much about the seats. You know,
they're finally doing the seats. Give them the props.
Absolutely. No. Yes. No, I'm not going to sit here and try to nitpick the things I don't like. They got cup holders. This was long overdue, and they're doing it, and it's actually getting done rather than a press release going out and being like, unfortunately, we weren't able to get the seats done this offseason, even though we thought we were going to. It looks like it's going to get done. And it was also pointed out, I think also by Adam, that it's a pretty quiet next couple months at Rogers Arena. I think they have just one date on May 13th or something there. And then there's not much going on in June as well. Yeah, there's the seat with the logo.
I see your point.
It's not the worst thing in the world, but it also is just like, okay.
It's huge. I think it should have been smaller.
I think though it might just be for the photo, right? Because you got to keep in mind, like they have the Warriors playing out of there as well. I don't think they'd put a Canucks logo on every single seat. If I was betting on this, I'd say it was just for the staged photo of these two seats that they popped into the tunnel, and not all of them will actually have the logo on them. Or maybe it'll be some have the Canucks, some have the Warriors, some have a Rogers Arena logo. It might be something along those lines.
I saw people preemptively dunking on the Canucks and making fun of the Canucks. They're, this organization is so cheap, they're probably going to sell the seats. Why wouldn't they sell those old seats? What the hell? You got to pay for some recycling company to come pick them up? No. Here, would you buy a Rogers Arena seat for your man cave for $25? Easy. Of course you would.
It's a very common thing to sell the seats. Like
absolutely,
especially because those are the original Rogers Arena seats. Like those are the seats that were there for the 2011 Cup final, right? Like a lot of people will pay to buy the seats.
Jacob, I want 2 for the studio. Two Rogers Arena seats.
Okay, well we'll have to. You're the boss. You're gonna have to get the approvals for that.
All right. Approved. It's approved. Now go get them. I just approved it live on air. Seriously though, I think that'd be cool. Like that'd be a cool thing to own. I like that. And I'll tell you, at the Edmonton office, our pals over at Oilers Nation, they've got those blue seats from the old Rexall place in the office, and it's super cool. It's awesome.
How much did they buy them for?
Oh, I don't know. I'll text Bag Milk right now.
But that is a pretty cool sort of piece of history to own. I will say, first of all, do we know if they have cup holders? I couldn't tell from that photo.
They do. Yes. Yeah. Okay, so on the back.
Yeah, and if these are leather, it reminds me a lot of the seats at Crypto.com in LA. Like similar sort of like black cushy, like those black cushy seats, cup holder, very comfortable. I love the seats at Crypto. Just going there, covering road games and sitting in them when you're covering practice. Huge upgrade from the seats at Rogers Arena right now.
What's the most you'd pay for a Rogers Arena seat? And, like put your personal situation aside of the fact that you probably don't want one. What's the most if you had like a basement that you watched your sports in or whatever? What's the most you would pay for a Rogers Arena seat? Chat, answer this as well.
See, the problem is I don't like the red. Like it's not aesthetically pleasing. That's my only thing.
It's actually why they got rid of them. It's part of the reason they got rid of them. But it's still, like you said, it's history. Like
I wouldn't pay much. I'm not gonna lie. Like it's cool, but I wouldn't pay much.
I think the highest I would go is 50 per seat. Although people in the chat have some theories that the team is going to try to sell them for a lot more. But I think 50 is auction them. That's the way to do it.
And then
And I mean, in a
that
perfect
funds
world,
Tom bonus.
well, no, I was gonna say in a perfect world that money would go to charity, but seriously, like people in the chat pointed out, like $100 a seat. How many seats they got in that place? That's like a bunch of money.
18,500 something.
So
Yeah,
what's
it either
that?
goes to the bonus pool or the building a practice facility pool.
I'm really bad at math, but I'm gonna figure this out right now. Yeah, it's 1.85 million. Is that right? That sound right? If you sell them for $100, 100 times 185. Yeah, there you go. Easy. Quick maths. Another one. Oh, here we go.
We got a super chat.
Spatzilly with a super chat here. I like this. He said, flipping the question on the hosts, if fair market value for Elias Pettersson is the 7x11 area, would you sign that this summer? No, I would not sign that for the Canucks this summer, but I think there are teams that would sign that. I don't think I would be the one to sign it in Vancouver right now, but alternatively, in a scenario where you need a top line center, I think you would go sign it.
Hold on a second here.
Yeah.
We've agreed that they probably need to keep him.
Mm-hmm.
What's his contract right now? 11.6 with another 7 years left.
Yeah.
So how can you say, yeah, let's keep him on one hand, and then on the other say you wouldn't sign that 11 times 7 and let him walk away somewhere else?
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Like, as far as I see, that's just a $600,000 discount.
That's me working through it. That's me working through it. And what I was getting at is that if they didn't have Elias Pettersson right now, they would need a first line center. And if they have the assets that they currently have, they're not going to be able to trade for a first and second line center. So yeah, you know what? I apologize. I absolutely would sign that this summer. That is a discount. That's a good question.
Yeah, and look, it's still a contract that you look at and go, there's some serious risk on it if he doesn't bounce back. But we know the position the Canucks are in. They have to take risks to be a successful team. They just don't have a runway to do it any other way.
That's an interesting one. Thank you for the super chat, especially. We appreciate it. That's a good question. Okay. Yeah, Mike Weller said if the Canucks didn't have PD, so no top 6 centers, they'd have to pay that or way more.
Well, we'll put it this way: if they didn't have PD, this forward group would have 0 players who've ever had a 60-point season in the NHL. Good luck doing anything, accomplishing anything in the NHL, starting from 0 forwards under contract who've ever had a 60-point season in the NHL.
Good luck. Rick Tockett's going back to TV. You see this, Harm? Rick Tocchet is heading to TNT just for the weekend. Friday and Saturday, he'll be on the broadcast. It's going to be great to watch him back on TV, even though, we'll see highlights of it on Twitter. We're not going to see it live. But I liked him on TV before he became the Canucks head coach, obviously. Liked his dealings with the media when he was Canucks head coach. So I'm excited to see that. I'm excited to see him back on TV. Some other stuff. Frank Saravalli was on Sportsnet 650 this morning and said he believes that Tocchet has had a interview with the Seattle Kraken. Now, obviously, that comes out as a bit of a surprise, perhaps, because one of the things Jim Rutherford cited in the post-Tocchet press conference was that Tocchet wanted to go back out east. Shortly after that, from Saravalli, Rick Dhaliwal reported that Tocchet is open to coaching out west, and that hold on, what was the quote? Let me find it. Yeah, this is what Dhaliwal said. He said, I'm under the impression that Tocchet will listen to all teams, including Seattle, Anaheim, possibly Los Angeles, if they make a change, not just East Coast teams. So there's a lot of interest in Tocchet. He's open to all East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, everything. Is what Dhaliwal had to say. And like I said, Saravalli said earlier in the day that he believes Tocchet has had an interview with the Seattle Kraken.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if he actually ends up in Seattle, though. I think he can end up with a better coaching opportunity than that. I think the Seattle Kraken are in a worse position than the Canucks.
I agree, but I think the Seattle Kraken would be a better team for Rick Tocchet to coach than the Canucks. Does that make sense?
Why?
Because I think that team could play the style that Rick Tocchet wants. Remember, tail end of the season, Canucks started to look like, oh my gosh, all these bottom six grinders are playing great. I think that's the Seattle Kraken. I think Rick Tocchet could really make the Seattle Kraken. I think, okay, put it this way. And maybe I'm wrong because obviously Quinn Hughes factor, right? But put it this way, I think of any available coach, I think Rick Tocchet is the best coach for the Seattle Kraken. The Seattle Kraken need Rick Tocchet a lot more than Rick Tocchet needs the Seattle Kraken.
I just think Tocchet can do way better, to be totally honest with you.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Sure, he'd be able to get them to defend well, but they would still presumably have scoring woes. I mean, McCann led them with 61 points this year. Next best was Stevenson at 51, and Stevenson can't drive, play, or play defense. So in some ways, the Kraken have worse scoring woes than the Canucks even. And put it this way, even if Tocchet went to the Kraken, I would still expect the Kraken to miss the playoffs. I don't think he would suddenly transform them into a playoff team overnight.
That's fair. Okay, the Utah Mammoth have arrived. They've announced their name. They've announced their logo. What did you think of the branding? I like it. I think it's good. I think it's sharp.
I like the logo.
You don't like the name?
Mammoth is all right. Like it's fine.
Yeti would have been cooler. The Utah Yetis.
I agree.
Cool.
It's decent. I'll take it. They didn't swing and miss here.
I disagree with the name. I liked Yeti at first, but then the last two the two newest teams in the league would both have like massive mythical figure names, like Kraken and Yeti. To me, like go back 20 years and be like, oh yeah, in 2025 the Kraken are going to play the Yeti in the NHL, and people would be like, are you sure it's not like junior or U15 hockey? Mammoth is kind of like that as well, but I think it's a little bit better than the name Yeti, in my opinion.
The logo looks sick, though. They nailed that.
100%. Logo looks awesome. And then here are the uniforms. So same uniforms, but they have a new number font. And then, of course, they got rid of the Utah on the home jersey and just put the logo. And then the away jersey has the Mammoth logo on the shoulders.
Go back to the Mammoth logo. If my geography knowledge is correct, that's the shape of Utah, right?
No, they have an alternate logo that's the shape of Utah, which is kind of like a rectangle with like a little smaller rectangle stuck on top of it. It's just shaped like mountains. That's all it is.
Okay. So my geography wasn't correct. Oh yeah, I'm wrong. Sorry. I was getting Utah confused with what state? I don't know. Anyways, we don't need to do geography. Jacob, pull up the what was that game called? GeoGuessr. Yeah, there we go. Pull up GeoGuessr. Let's play right now.
I hate that game.
Yeah, I know you did not like that game. I had a lot of fun doing it. Okay. I wanted to also mention Family Feud surveys. Need some more responses. We're gonna play tomorrow. Did we get an influx after shouting it out on the show yesterday, Jacob?
I will check, but I would imagine we did.
Good.
Good. Oh, yeah, we're close. We're at 78 responses right now. So 22 more, and we'll be good to go. So if you haven't filled out the survey yet, in the description on YouTube, Facebook, audio podcast, if you're on any other platform, search us out either on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube. You'll find us.
If you don't fill out the survey, we have to send it out to the Twitterverse. And they're not Canucks Convo listeners. They ruin the data. So we need Canucks Convo listeners only to respond to the survey. Get your responses in, and we will play Family Feud tomorrow. Kurt Milosky, head coach of the Vancouver Warriors, is also going to join us on the show tomorrow. We're going to pre-record that interview with Kurt, but we'll have it on the show. It's going to be a lot of fun. Always fun to talk to Kurt. Obviously, the Warriors have been eliminated from the playoffs, but what does an NLL offseason look like? We're going to find out tomorrow. But I think that's it for today. Was there anything I missed? I feel like we talked playoffs. We got into the PD conversation. I think we're good. There was actually some news around the league today, but I think we've covered it all. Anything you want to say, Harm?
Nope.
All right. Let's get to our Bet 365 bet of the day. I nailed it yesterday, hey? Or no, not yesterday. What did I pick yesterday?
I don't even remember what you picked.
I think I picked Capitals. So I did not nail it yesterday. I did nail that the Toronto Maple Leafs were going to win game one. Harm.
Yeah, you already took that victory lap yesterday.
I know. I was building up to today's. Let me speak. Today's Toronto's an even bigger underdog at home. I don't think they're winning game 2, though. I picked Panthers in 5, and I think that starts tonight. They don't have Anthony Stolarz. That's been confirmed. It's going to be Joseph Wall in net for the Leafs tonight. I'm going to say it's a Florida Panthers win, but I'm not even going to pick them as the bet because they're minus 150 favorites. Like, everyone thinks the Panthers are going to win this game, so I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to take the favorites. That's too lame. I am instead going to look at the Dallas-Winnipeg game. The Jets are at home to open this series, and I am going to take the underdog Winnipeg Jets to win game 1 against the Dallas Stars. Right now, you can get Jets money line at plus 100, and that is what I'm taking for our bet of the day, brought to you by Bet365. And if you want to get in on the action for the Stanley Cup playoffs, Bet365 has got you covered. From game props, player props, totals, and the money line, you can even bet on futures like series winners, conference champions, and the Stanley Cup champions, and much, much more. Whatever your bet is, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app and get in on the game. An official partner of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Must be 90 plus to play. If you choose to play, please play responsibly. All right, we will close it out there. For my co-host Harmon Dial and our technical producer Jacob Lazar, my name is Dave Quadrelli. Thanks so much for this episode of Canucks Conversation.
Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.